This episode is brought to you by Fortis et Fidelis, honoring the brave and faithful service of our fallen. The free will never forget.
Are you interested in creating your own podcast? If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First, it's free. Secondly, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. This is weird being on the other side of things.
Is Jay Marie, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time here and also filling out that form.
Of course. I didn't quite know exactly how to answer some of those because it's like, well, I mean, I'm still in.
Yeah. It's most of it is like tailored to like veterans and people are not in. But anyway, it's all good. We can go from there.
Okay.
Before we get started, is there anything that like anything you want to like specifically cover, or anything specifically you don't want to talk about, or 'cause you said you're still active duty, so
Yeah, so there's not really anything that, I don't know. But I will say that I can't talk about exactly what I do in the military because what I do is very rare for a female to do. So it's
okay.
easily to narrow it down. That'll be like the only thing that I can't quite like. I'm free range. I'm an open book. I don't know if you've listened to any of my episodes, but I'm pretty non-filtered. So that is my question though, like how filtered do I need to be? Like,
Oh no, you're good. We can, if you want to cuss, that's fine. We can do
okay.
that.
I was like, I don't know if I need to be proper or put whatever. And okay.
No, it's all good. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we can kind of just start recording here. I'm probably gonna put this recording tomorrow because I release one every Friday.
Okay.
Just because I had to reschedule other recordings, so but it'll probably be out tomorrow.
Okay.
Cool. All right, so if there's no other questions, I'll do like a countdown from 3 and then intro, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, 3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Brave and Faithful. I'm your host, Raiden Dionisio, and today I have a Marine and a podcaster. She is the host of Women with an Effed Up Mind. I have Jay Marie. How's it going, Jay?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time. So I mentioned you're in the Marine Corps. How did you, still being active, where did the idea of starting a podcast come about?
So everybody in the military knows that, we signed that page 11 that says we can't talk about things that can shine a negative light on any type of branch, any type that has to do with government. Even when it comes to our political views, we have to make sure that we make that statement as this is my own personal beliefs, has nothing to do with whatever branch that we're serving in. So I don't know if you're familiar with, but back in it was like the January, February timeframe.
Mm.
That sergeant from the Marine Corps, she went TikTok viral, and everybody just kind of just demolished. They were either for her, demolished her. Like it was ridiculous. And I was kind of at my wits with things because there was a lot of things going on in my units with Marines that had mental health issues that were just being completely blackballed. And it was really hard because I'm one of those type of people, like, this is a mountain I'm willing to die on, is standing up for others, especially when I know they have mental health issues, or they're a victim of whether it's sexual assault or domestic violence or sexual harassment due to
Right.
personal experience. So I was like, fuck, man, I'm so tired of sitting here, with a thumb on my ass and not saying anything. Like, I'm so tired of being quiet. And I know I'm one of many that just hate the fact that we have to be silent. So what better way than to start a podcast, because it's literally me talking, but there's no face to it. And
Right.
I've even kind of turned my logo, which it's like the Rosie Riveter modern times, but she fits certain characteristics as to me. There's the tattoos that I don't show, or the button that has the F-bomb on there, and the earrings I legit wear outside of uniform, obviously, is what she's wearing in the logo. Like, it's just little tidbits to make it my own, but it's just the most that you'll get to see of me, unless you look like at my Instagram. Then I post pictures of myself in a mask, in sunglasses, and no tattoos, so you'd have no idea. And like my personal social media follows none of my accounts. So
Okay. So how long have you been doing the podcasting for?
So I actually just started February of this year. So
Okay.
I'm still fairly new. Starting to get the hang of things. Because if you listen to my first episode, oh my God. Like, it's rough.
We all start somewhere,
Oh, yeah.
We're all like that.
Yeah.
So I mentioned you were in the Marine Corps. Are you able to say how long you've been in?
No, I don't. I try to be as vague as I can when it comes to that, just because, like I told you before, if I say just the slightest details of anything, I just try to cover my tracks a little bit, but I haven't been in crazy long. So let's put it that way, and that I joined late.
What would you say has been your biggest takeaway so far from the military?
So I have my days where I'm like, fuck, man, I'm getting out. And then I have my days where I'm like, okay, no, this is cool. So one thing that I can really appreciate is just being a better person. I've always been known as mom. In high school, growing up, I was mom to everybody. But really being away from my comfort zone, stepping out, going to a new place, new people, new and completely new environment, it's like I've learned better to be how do I put this? I've accepted and learned how to be okay being uncomfortable, and how things are just effed up, which is where the name actually came from for the podcast. Like, my user handle is everything is it's effed up, or women with an effed up mind, because that's literally like things are so screwed up because we fail to realize, like, even underneath a uniform, we're still human at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, you got an interesting podcast name, where that came about.
Yeah, when we originally, so I used to have a co-host, but we're kind of separated in our unit, so we kind of she was doing other things, so our schedules didn't align anymore. But we used to do, it's, now that I think about it, it's so stupid why we did it. But the first couple episodes, she used to say, we're fucked up. And I'm like, that's how we ended the episodes. And I'm like, what? But really where the name came from was with my platform, which is it addresses sexual assault, sexual harassment, domestic violence, and the mental health stigma in the military. So it's like we were two women that started out that, we're fucked up in the head by what we've had to endeavor during our time in the service. And then it kind of just, because at first, I'm not going to lie, at first, when I first started doing it, it was really geared towards women, women this, women that. And then, I always knew these problems were also a male issue, but it took me a little bit to realize, okay, this is actually more severe of a human issue than I honestly thought. So then I was like, you know what? We're just going to keep the title, and it's effed up, and run with it, because that's how we start. I mean, that's how we started, so.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, you're talking about things that, we might not be able to talk publicly about, but it's especially with women, right? With some of the topics that you just mentioned, um, they might not be able to talk about it publicly, but maybe just by listening to the show or the podcast, they have a feeling of, not, maybe not being alone, and they can relate to some of the things that you guys are talking about.
Absolutely. And that was the goal, is to give people like that, because that's why I asked you at the beginning, like, how do I need to filter myself? Because that's the one thing that I take pride on, is that we aren't filtered. We take care of like the people, like we have guests on there sharing their story. Obviously, we talk to them with their comfortability level. But at
Mm.
the end of the day, like military, we have a certain way. We deal with pain with fucked up humor, but it's just who we are. I don't do the professional thing. I talk about the real life issues and the raw side of it. And like one of my little sayings is like ruffling feathers. And that actually, the reason I kept that is like, I know that's a very, like, everybody says that, but the reason I made that like one of my big slogans was when I first hit the fleet. I, my first weekend, or my first week there, my XO at the time told me, he was like, "You walked up in this unit and was like ruffling everybody's feathers," and I was
Mm.
like, "Ah, I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna use that." Like,
Right.
and that's always stuck with me when he told me that, because that's just how I am. I'm not one of those types that's like, "Oh, I know it all, I know better." But at the end of the day, like if you're wrong, like if you're doing some fucked up things, like treating a Marine, it's ironic that we did this today. Not ironic, but what happened. So, like, for example, today I got a phone call that one of my Marines tried to commit suicide. And
Oh.
I lost my whole fucking mind. I walked in the command office, and I'm surprised I'm not going to get an NJP, because I was like, this is fucked up. I warned you guys. I literally told them 2 days ago that if they kept poking the bear on this Marine, and they were just going out of their way. Like one of the gunnies even made a comment about making sure this Marine becomes a private before he gets out, because he's already getting out and has literally just been waiting on his 5-day letter. Which, if you don't know what a 5-day letter is, it's basically a letter that says, "Hey, you got 5 days, pretty much, to get the fuck out."
Wow.
And he's literally been waiting on that for a week, and they're trying to just demolish him. And I was like, and then when I got that phone call this morning, and I was like, I walked in there, I said, "I literally fucking told you so. But you guys want to keep poking, keep prying, but this is what happened. And I literally told you that this was going to happen." Like things like that. I don't, like I said, I'm not one of those ones that's like, "Oh my God, I know it all." Like, haha. No. Like, it's just, if you are doing some fucked up shit, somebody's got to be the one that says something, because I'm so sick of this mindset of, well, that's just the way it's always been. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's not how it should be, regardless of what branch or rank or whatever it is. It shouldn't be the mindset, well, that's just the way it's always been, because you've got a new generation, you've got new things. We've got people. I had some girl come to me, because I'm in this group. She had an incident in 1975 and just now started talking about it.
Now just started feeling comfortable talking about it.
Exactly. Like, and that's the one thing that I also put on the podcast, is I put all kinds of resources out there, because maybe that I just hit that one day where it was like they needed that resource, or it helped somebody else for another person so that they were educated. And I've had guests come on that tell their stories and the process of how they went through it in specific branches or just in the legal system, because a lot of people don't know what the next step is. They don't know what's coming. And like with my case right now, my domestic violence case, I don't know what's coming, because this is new to me. Like I can hear other stories, but like with domestic violence, that's like such an unknown thing in the military, that like nobody knows the real process of anything, because there's no policies, which is a big platform for me right now, but I don't know. And so I tell people like what's going on, what's the next step, because so they are aware or have an idea. Now, will it go the exact same way? There's no telling. but at least they have some sort of idea of how to handle it. And then like with mental health, holy Jesus, it doesn't matter what type of person you are, what branch you're in.
Right.
Like mental health has this stigma across the board. And it's like, why? Why does that determine, like, you're having a really hard time with life? How does that determine that you're a shitbag? That's like the universal term for everybody in the military. Is if you've got human issues, like, you're a shitbag. And that's the one thing, like, I'm really pushing on the stigma across the board to help change that, to create, like, I'm not saying we've got to be soft, because that's what we joined the military for. We're freaking war fighters, especially in the Marine Corps. Like, I was talking to a lieutenant colonel today for this inspection about, we train these Marines to be war fighters, but then we bring them back, and it's like, do they turn that switch off? And if they don't, and then they deteriorate, then what? We're not taking, like, a lieutenant colonel who, it was a random conversation that we had. It was just so random. But it was like the fact that he acknowledges that too, like we don't take care of our people, especially in peacetime. And that's like the biggest thing. Like, if you're not taking care of your service members in peacetime, then how do you expect them to be effective war fighters and have your back?
Yeah, I think it's important, especially for leaders. And kudos to that lieutenant colonel, right, for just bringing that up and having that conversation, with one of his Marines, because I think you mentioned earlier, like, that's just the way we always done it, right? And that's the wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
If that's your answer, that's the wrong answer, because how we did things 20, 10 years, maybe 5 years ago, it's completely different to how we deal with and do things now. So not just leaders, but everybody's got to be aware of what's available, what resources are provided and available for us that we can use to help out our sailors, Marines, soldiers, airmen. Like, everybody has to be abreast of what's available out there for our people.
Absolutely. And it's like, we talk about these different resources that we have, but it's like, where are these resources at? This was also a reality check for me one day, is I went in to go see the chaplain to talk about one of my this Marine, actually, that I just spoke about. And I walked out of the office, like, we had the door shut because I didn't want people hearing about that shit, because it's none of their business. I walked out of the chaplain's office, and I had a ton of people all day asking me, like, what's going on? What's wrong with you? Why were people saw you at the chaplain today? What the? First off, none of your business. Secondly, I'm good. It wasn't even about me, but it was like a reality check. Like, that should be not how people treat that. If you see somebody with the chaplain, okay, turn around, mind your own business. And then if you want to have a conversation with them, you're like, hey man, how's it going? You doing all right? How's life? Like,
Just check in. Yeah.
Exactly. Engage in a conversation. Even if at the end of the day, it's one thing I've always said, even at the end of the day that you truly just don't give a shit, at least try to give some shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can sit there and just, like, sometimes that's all people need to do is just talk and just rant. And that can make such a significant difference in people's mental health than people realize. Like, just listen to it. Even if you give that dazed stare, be some type of engaged in it instead of the, wow, that's crazy conversation. But it's mind boggling how just going to talk to the chaplain about another Marine, how people, like, bombarded me, like, trying to be nosy about it. And it's like, well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
I was just saying that it shouldn't be that way. And I had a Marine last year who I did everything I could to try to help her. But it got to the point where I was like, I can only do so much. You need to go get professional help, or go talk to somebody that's not biased, or, whatever, knows how to gear a certain way. She started getting the help that she needed, going to the appointments, doing what she needed to do to get better, wanted to get back in, she was motivated to get back in the fight. I watched her go from this dark place and get better. But the moment she stepped back to work, they or even when she was at her appointments, they were, oh my God, they were demolishing her name, dragging her name through the mud, telling her like she's a shitbag. She doesn't deserve to feel this way. What could she possibly have wrong with her? She's never seen, combat or never done anything. Like she's new. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like just talking so much shit while she's trying to get the proper help. But not on a single one of them texted her or called her and been like, hey, how you doing? And then her NCO, she had an appointment. So every day after her appointment, she would text me, call me, or we'd go get chow, whatever it was. And I hadn't heard from her because I texted her, I'm like, hey, let's go get Jimmy John's for chow. And I didn't hear from her. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe the appointment's, going late, whatever. So then 2:00 rolls around. Still haven't heard from her. I'm like, well, that's weird. So I asked her NCO, like, hey, have you heard from her? And he goes, I've tried calling her, but it's ringing all the way through. Or not ringing, it's cutting off or whatever. Yeah. I said, no. I told him, I was like, I just called her and it's still ringing. He's like, well, I don't know. She's still at the appointment. I dropped her off. So then 4:00 rolls around and I still haven't heard from her. Nobody went and picked her up. So I'm like, all right, something's not right still. And he kept saying she's still in an appointment. I said, have you talked to her? He said, no, I haven't seen her, talked to her since I dropped her off. Okay, so then my gut was like, something's not fucking right. And at the time, I was sort of new to this unit. So I was like, you know what? I went to the platoon sergeant. He was brand new. And I was like, look, I know I'm stepping out of line. Something's not right. So we went to her platoon sergeant and he was like, well, the NCO is saying she's at an appointment. I said, no, the fuck she's not. Something's not right. So then they pulled me aside. That NCO pulled me aside and blasted me. Like, I mean, just holy shit. Like, whatever. Because I went around him and made him look stupid for not having accountability of his Marine. I didn't give a shit. Like, that's my friend. You don't care about your own Marine, but I do. So I go home to go change my clothes and figure out and to come back because I lived off base. And I get a phone call from that platoon sergeant and said they found her. He had to call around. He called everywhere. He called PMO. He called everywhere. Found out she tried to kill herself that morning and was in the hospital.
Wow.
And I showed up to go get a bag for her to bring her clothes and bring her stuff to the hospital. And that NCO was there. And he just looked at me. And I was like, look, I don't care about your rank. I told you. Like, that's fucked up. And he had nothing to say. Because I'm like, this is just shit like that. Like, you're an NCO. You were supposed to be taking care of your Marines. This Marine was only in charge of, like, 8 people. 8 people.
Right.
So it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Why do you have that rank? Why are you in that position if you can't even care about your own Marines?
So what do you think are some of the challenges, like with Marines, sailors, soldiers, anybody has when they're trying to get the help or assistance that they need? And what, second question, follow up to that, what can leaders do better in trying to get that help or assistance?
So we all know it's hard. Like, when somebody goes through something, it's hard to reach out in general. Like, that's just human nature. But I think a big part of it is the education side of things and small leadership just being educated. Well, one, small leadership being educated enough to recognize the signs. I think personally, this is my personal opinion, that if you reach the rank of NCO or higher, you should be trained. Like, you shouldn't have to be like a UVA or a sharp or, any of those type of, you shouldn't have to have that billet to at least be educated on the signs. Like, there are like, sometimes people don't show signs. Like, I'm not saying that, they always do. But, like, for example, that Marine specifically, she showed signs. The Marine today, he showed signs. But it's like a lack of education. So, like, with my unit specifically, and I know it's not every unit, but, like, my unit specifically, we have read boards in every fucking corner you could probably think of. You got it even in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
But not a single one has anything about chaps, mental health, who to call, where to go, how to be anonymous, or anything like that. Like, even if it just posted up the military one source line or the veteran crisis line, like that veteran crisis line alone, like, is a big deal, regardless of what your situation is. Like that alone would be huge. But I think that's what it falls down, is the lack of education, because we go through these annual trainings or quarterly trainings, whatever, but they're bullshit. They death by PowerPoint. The person that's usually leading it is a platoon sergeant that's reading the PowerPoints. People are playing on their phones. They just don't care enough to be into it or to educate it. So I think that's really where it falls into, is just education and making it more known and normalizing mental health. That's where I think it also lacks, because you bring that with not normalizing mental health, also is that brings in that fear, because again, as Marines, we are trained to be killers. We're trained to be suck it up, buttercup, swallow like the big blue pill, and deal with it another time, if at all. But if you do deal with it, you're going to be labeled as a pussy, or you're weak, or you can't hang, basically, or you don't rate. That has irked me. The amount of times I've heard people don't rate mental health irks the shit out of me.
Have you seen that lack of training or education from other commands, or do you see like specifically where you're at?
So I've seen it specifically with mine. I've also talked to a lot of people, like doing the advocacy work that I have with the podcast. That's like every so often I'll do like a poll, like a whatever, and I'll ask them like, okay, tell me about, do you know what FAP is, which is the Family Advocacy Program, or do you know about these resources, or how did you find out, if at all, did you know? Because like I'm involved in all these different groups on Facebook and stuff, that I ask them. Like I make sure that I get outside of my bubble, because maybe I'm just attached to a shithead of a unit. So I make sure that I go outside that bubble, all branches, because when I talk about things, I don't direct the podcast or the advocacy work to only the Marine Corps. I actually never really talk about the Marine Corps unless it's like just to say, okay, well, they have the Army side of things, and then I have the Marine Corps side of things. And there's one podcast that I really work with, actually two of them. There's the Cruise Corner, and she's got the Army side of things. And then the Carry On podcast, who she's like the officer side in the Army of things. And then I've got a bunch of people to where I've talked about in the Air Force or in the Navy. I've had guests from all spectrums, and I try to, open the horizon so that I am not so one-sided about things. Right. Now, I have talked to people to where the units did have the resources put out there, and they did know about the resources. But the ratio between knowing and not knowing are so far apart from each other that it's like, that's where I really think where can be a stepping stone is just education. And I'm not saying do a death by PowerPoint, every single week or whatever, but there needs to be something that's like a requirement. Okay, to be an NCO, you should try to do these things, because they're actually pushing that. So with this new, like the I Am Vanessa Gann Act, one of the things in the bill talked about for you to reach like I think it was an E9 or higher, or an O3 or higher, you have to take these specific classes to be able to determine and to handle or understand sexual assault or sexual harassment or whatever it is, to even get promoted. At that level of ranking, it's like you need to do that at the lower levels that are going to be more interactive with those service members than the higher ups, because before it gets to an E9 or higher or an O3 or higher, whatever, there's so many different channels. It's like playing telephone. Like you're going up to the end. So it's like the real problem will get lost by the time that happens. And they're not super engaged in those service members' life. So why don't we require that or make them go through some type of training to help with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to. So you mentioned Carry On podcast. Lindsay
I
is
love
great, by
her.
the way. Yeah.
I love
shout
her.
out shout out to Lindsay. Make sure you guys go check out her podcast too. Carry On
Mm-hmm.
podcast. But yeah, I wanted to go back to the podcast. So you said you since February, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so since February you started the podcast. Um, it hasn't been that long. What would you say has been like the most rewarding part so far since starting the podcast?
The helping people when like sometimes I forget, like not forget, but like don't realize the impact of it sometimes until I'll get these messages like, hey, thanks for putting this out there, I was able to help a friend. Or hey, listening to you and realizing that I'm not alone is what's really helped me keep moving along in the process, whether it's reporting or doing anything like that. It's That's the most rewarding for me because I don't want anything out of this. I don't want money. I don't want fame. I just I have found my purpose in life, and that is to help people. I live, my friend Kara that I had, she was a guest on one of my episodes, and she was like, I live to serve. And that's kind of like, that kind of sat with me because I'm like, yeah, like I just want to help people. I don't, like I said, I don't want fame. I don't want money. I don't want to make a business of this. Like, I just want to make sure that people don't feel the way that I felt when I went through my situations. I don't want them to feel alone and that they have to bottle it up or have to be quiet, whether they're male or female or whatever it is that they identify as. I want them to realize like there is a community, that you're not alone and
Right.
that you can talk about it. You don't have to be silent. Because that's another thing on the podcast is that I'm anonymous. So when I have people reach out to be on the podcast or to tell their stories, because there's been a couple episodes that like people got very graphic, like, and that's what, I don't push it, but that's what I want is I want people to realize like that's the point of making people uncomfortable that need to be uncomfortable about it. And so I let them, if you want to be anonymous and tell your story, you are 100% allowed to. Because I've had active duty come on too, and they're like, yo, I need to, yeah, can't put my name out there. I was like, girl, like I'm the same boat, so we're good. Um, but that's been the most rewarding part for me is just being able to help people like I want to. And it's actually, brought light to what I want to do getting out of the Marine Corps. So I'm currently actually in school right now to be a lawyer, and I want to be able to. So with my case was very mishandled. Um, so I don't want people to feel or go through what I went through. I want to try to be contracted through the military because they're trying to push towards like civilian side of things. Um, so I want to be a part of that to help victims, whether it is, you know, being hurt with whether they were sexually assaulted, they're sexually harassed, domestic violence, the mental health side of it, whatever it is. I just want to be able to continue to help people in different areas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think trying to help just tell the story and get their story out there, even if it's just it might be just good for them just to talk about it, right? And you're part of that process, part of that healing process that you're able to help them out. Um, so Jay, what's one actionable step that you can give our audience right now in pursuit of their, if they want to be a podcaster or if you want to, pursuit of that second service, so to say.
Hell, if I'm gonna start a podcast, that's so easy. Like I didn't realize how easy it was until like I got into it. Like I have people ask me all the time because it's one of the things I always talk about is like everybody eats at the table. There's no like competition with this. So like I love when people ask me for help on it. Like I'm still trying to figure it out, but here this is what I know so far. Um my biggest piece is learn to be okay being uncomfortable, whether that is completely uprooting your life. If you join the military and then you're like, okay, well, do I want to stay where I'm at, stay in the military, go back home? Like, you just got to figure out kind of like play around with it. Like, it's okay to not have a set plan, but like have an idea, if that makes sense. But it's like be okay being uncomfortable sometimes, because sometimes it might be the best thing you ever did. Like me uprooting my entire life at 24 years old and say, fuck it, let's be a Marine. Like it's brought me heartache, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Honestly, wouldn't have. Like it's put me in a lot of situations where I'm like, I've had epiphanies on life. So yeah, that would be my biggest thing. Like, don't. My other saying is, this is fit perfect, is just do the damn thing. Because if you have a goal and you're like, well, I don't really know, like, no, go send it, do the damn thing, and you're not alone in it. If you need help with something, I've got you. If I don't know it, I've got a community now, thanks to the podcast, that I'm sure somebody down the line can help you, whether it's starting a nonprofit or getting involved in your community. Like, just finding your little niche, play around with it. If you want to go work with homeless and then you find out that's not your thing, that's fine. Or if you want to go back to college and you realize it's not your thing, that's fine. But don't be afraid to just do the damn thing and send it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's simple, but I mean, impactful message, right? Like, if you're in pursuit of something, like, how are you gonna know that you can't do it if you don't do the damn thing, like you just said, right? And like, there's if everybody's heard that saying, "Get comfortable being uncomfortable." I think too many people are too comfortable and not willing to be uncomfortable in pursuit of whatever it is that they want to do, because it's not they're not used to it. They might not be used to it. They don't want to fail or get hurt or anything like that. But that's where the growth comes from. That's where growth happens, is when you try to push yourself.
You are never too old to keep growing.
Right. Definitely. All right, so Jay, so this is the second part of our podcast here. So this is what I call the Fast Five. It's the same 5 questions asked all my guests. So first question here, what's one hobby you enjoy?
Drawing.
Okay.
I don't get to do it often, but that's, yeah.
Okay. Second question, if you had to choose one person to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Oh, shit. Oh my God, I have no idea. RBG. I just want to pick her brain because she was a huge advocate for women before she passed away. And men, actually. Men and women.
Awesome. Next question, recommend a book for our audience to read.
I've got 2. Bottled Away or The Gaslit Heart by Lonnie Hankins.
Bottled Away, or what was the second one?
The Gaslit Heart.
Gaslit Heart. Okay. Next question? What's your favorite quote and why?
Keep on keeping on. Because in 2017 was one of the darkest years of my entire life. I actually attempted suicide twice. And the first thing that made me laugh was Joe Dirt.
Joe.
Yeah, I'm not even kidding you. That's literally like that was the first time I'd laughed in over 7 months. It was like 6-7 months. And I was like, fuck it. There's my life motto.
Keep on keeping on. Love it. All right, so last question here. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or even 10 years from now?
Oh boy. Well, I'm hoping to continue to do this. The goal is to create policies when it comes to my certain platform, and to be able to take care of service members like the way they should be taken care of, whether they are a combat veteran or even just peacetime, service member. I just want to continue to help people, whether it is just doing the podcast, doing advocacy work in DC or throughout the military, and being a lawyer. And I actually, fun fact, want to own my own bar.
You once owned your own bar?
Yes.
And then you joined the Marine Corps, or is, like, how that?
So I've always wanted to own my own bar. But I never really, I guess, because my side job, because I worked in law enforcement before the Marine Corps, and then my side job was a bartender.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to do it. And then like being in the military, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that.
A lawyer and a bartender.
And I want to have a llama farm. Fun fact.
What was that?
A llama farm.
Llama
I want
farm.
a farm with
Okay.
llamas and horses again.
Well, Jay Marie, I appreciate you for taking the time here, sharing a little bit about your story and, of course, your podcast, Women with an Effed Up Mind. Make sure you all check that out. One last thing before we go, where can our audience find you? Where can they support you at?
So I'm social media wise, I'm really big on Instagram. Still trying to figure out Facebook and Twitter. And then if you want to listen to the podcast, I am on every platform, but I usually just tell people Apple or Spotify. Spotify is usually the big one. But yeah, those are my biggest ones, Instagram and Spotify.
Awesome. So guys, gals, make sure you go check out Women with an Effed Up Mind with Jay Marie. Check out an Instagram and all the podcast platforms. And Jay Marie, appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Want to support an active duty owned brand? Head over to fortis-fidelis.com. Again, that's fortis-fidelis.com. And help us in honoring the brave and faithful service of our nation's defenders. All proceeds will help us create and provide memorial coins to the families of our fallen service members. Again, that's fortis-fidelis.com. And help Fortis et Fidelis in honoring the brave and faithful.
Hey everyone, Raiden here. I just want to thank you for listening to our podcast. And make sure you guys go check out our website, fortis-fidelis.com. Again, that's fortis-fidelis.com, and learn how you can help us support in providing these memorial coins to the families of the fallen. And make sure you guys go follow our social media on Facebook, FRTS FDLS. Again, that's FRTS FDLS. And on Instagram and Twitter at FRTS_FDLS. Again, that's FRTS_FDLS. And make sure you guys go subscribe, review, and leave a comment on our podcast on all the podcast platforms. Till then, take care.